This is Kat Chancellor with Stamp Art Connection and StampArtConnection.com. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and today I'm going to demonstrate this card fast and easy using several stamp sets and some of the products from Stampin' Up! What you're going to need to put this card together are going to be the High Tide stamp set for the lighthouse. We're using a sentiment from the Climbing Orchid, and I'm using some dies from the Lift Me Up bundle and stamps from the Lily Pad Lake. You're also going to need some of the burlap ribbon, Memento ink. I'm using one of the new colors, Poppy Parade, the embossing paste, as well as some white embossing powder. I'm just using one block for my sentiment, and I'm going to be using my Stamparatus. And lastly, the cardstock you'll need, and you could either use Real Red or Night of Navy. And this is your standard card size in 5.5 and 4 1/4, with a layering piece in Whisper White of 5 1/4 by 4. And finally, the piece that we're going to be stamping and embossing on, which is 5 3 3/4. I also have a couple of extra pieces of Whisper White because this is what we're going to use to cut out our sentiment and our lighthouse. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is bring my Stamparatus into view, and the Stamparatus has two plates. The first plate you can, and this is especially good for two-step stamping because that's exactly what this lighthouse is. So I have one of the images of the lighthouse, and this is going to be the black image that's already on the first plate. I'm going to put my second plate into my Stamparatus, and I have some baby wipes because I just want to make sure that it's clean. And I'm putting it with the grid part on the top, so the smooth part is on the bottom. And this will help to make sure that your stamps are going to stick to the smooth part. I have a couple of magnets. Here are the magnets. This magnet actually broke, but you know, I really rather like it because I can make sure that I can get into these tiny places instead of with the large magnet. And then I have another large magnet here. So I'm going to go ahead and take my white cardstock, and I'm going to slip it right here in this corner and make sure that it fits snugly. And I'm going to place my magnets and make sure that my magnets are well out of the way of my Stamparatus. And I'm going to move this magnet so there it will now close easily. For this, we're going to begin with the black. I'm just going to stamp this up with my Memento ink, and I'm going to press. Now, you have to press a little hard on this corner because even though I have the magnet there, it does kind of take a little bit more pressure. And I've got some white spot here, and let me just go ahead and move in so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm just re-stamping my image, bringing it down and then pressing it, and then very carefully lifting it up, and there you go. I've got it stamped. So now that I have it stamped, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my other image, and I'm just going to lay that down on top of my stamped image. And I'm making sure that I have it lined up. And I'm going to pick it up with my Stamparatus. Make sure that I have this in there well, even if I have to bring some of my magnets closer. And then I'm going to take my Poppy Parade and go ahead and stamp. Look at that, absolutely perfect. I love the Stamparatus, and I actually use this more than I use my blocks now. So I'm just cleaning off my stamps, and there is my image. So to store my Stamparatus now, what I'm going to do is simply close one plate, and then I'm going to lift the other plate, and I'm just going to lay that on top with my stamp on top. Otherwise, if you lay it with your stamp on the bottom, it's going to stick, and when you pull it off, you're going to lose the placement of your stamp. So if you're going to make a bunch of stamps, that's what I would recommend. So what I'm going to do now is simply fussy cut this lighthouse, and for just simply ease of making the video, ta-da, there it is. It's all fussy cut. So now I'm going to bring into view my pool party piece of cardstock. And with the pool party, I'm going to take this wonderful wavy stamp, and I'm just going to grab one of these blocks, and I forgot to mention you will need your Versamark, and I'm going to bring my Versamark in, and I'm just going to get a piece of paper here on my sheet. And if you see this right here, I messed this up. I put some black ink on my Versamark pad. I wasn't paying attention, but I soaked it up pretty good. So it's basically just Versamark, but that's what happens when you try to ink a bunch of pads at once. Sometimes you get a little bit, you get confused. Okay, so I've got this lined up, and I'm simply going to stamp this, and I can see the lines of where I stamped it. So then I'm just going to walk this right up, and I don't even care if it overlaps a little bit. It doesn't really matter. It's not like you have to get it perfect, even if it just kind of overlaps. And here I missed a gap. All I have to do if you missed and you have a gap is just go ahead and stamp like the top of your card stock, and just lay that piece right in there, and you can just restamp it. There you go. It's a little dark in there, but I'm not really going to worry about it. So I'm going to put that aside, wipe off my stamp, and bring out my embossing powder. Okay, so now that I have my cardstock embossed with the white embossing powder using these wonderful swirls from the Lily Pad Lake, the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to add some of my embossing paste, and I have my silicone sheet that I'm going to put right here, and I'm going to use a round trowel. And for my clouds, what I've done is I took the framelets, these cloud framelets here, out of the Lift Me Up bundle, and a couple of pieces of clear acetate, and I went ahead and I cut out the clouds so that I could use them as stencils to make my clouds. So the first one I'm going to do is going to be this cloud right here along the side of my card. I'm just going to pick up some of my embossing paste, and I'm just going to go ahead and spread it out. And I can go ahead and move in a little bit so you can see my technique. I'm just spreading it out, but while I'm spreading it and I'm holding down my acetate, while I'm spreading it, I'm just kind of picking it a little bit so that I make little peaks. Just like when you're frosting a cake, you take your spatula and you make little peaks, because I want this to have kind of a cloud texture. And make sure I get that on the end, then I'm going to lift it up. Okay, there's my first cloud. I'm going to move this aside and clean off that piece there. I'm then going to take my other little stencil that has a cloud, and I'm going to place this right here, and I'm going to use the same technique. I'm just going to just pick up some of this paste, smear it onto my stencil, making sure that I get coverage, and then I'm just going to use kind of that, try to peak my paste so I have a cloud texture. And there we go. So now I have my my clouds. So all I have to do is grab a baby wipe and clean off my stencils, and I can use them for my next card. Just wipe them off with the baby wipe. And with any die, you can make a stencil. And I will have an online class that I will be offering if you check my blog and you sign up for my newsletter, where I will show you some other ways that you can use stencils and paste featuring this Lily Lake card set. That is really, really super. Okay, so now that we've done that, the next thing we're going to do is set this aside so it dries, and I have a smaller piece of cardstock here. I'm going to move my silicone mat. And with this smaller piece of cardstock, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the die from the Lily Pad Lake, and I'm going to stamp "Thank you." And I actually either use my stamp pad, my Memento stamp pad, or I've also been using my my black marker for very fine lettering stamps. I'm just going to stamp this up and stamp that right there. Perfect. Okay. So let me run this through the Big Shot. When you run this through the Big Shot, I want you to put your framelit closer to this edge than lining it up in the middle. And that's because what we're going to do is we're going to make a pennant out of this framelit. So that's one of the tips for putting this together. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim this back edge. So now that I have it square, and then I'm bringing in my punch here. I'm going to line this up so that this will fit right in. It will fit right in this slot. So I just push it forward until I see both the corners. And now I have a pennant, and I want that a little bit shorter, so I'm going to push it in again and line it up. There, that's perfect. So now I have a pennant. There it is. And I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to take a piece. I'm going to take my Real Red Stamping Right marker, and I'm going to use the thin side, and I'm going to make some it's gonna look like stitching around the edge of my pennant. So just very carefully, I'm just doing a dashed line all the way across along the edge. I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to do a dashed line along the top of along the other edge. Just very carefully, dashed line. And where there isn't room for a line, all you have to do is like add a little dot. There. Okay, so now we have our pennant. And our pennant is going to go right here. We've cut out our lighthouse. We have a pennant. Now our pennant is going to sit on top of the our burlap ribbon. So I'm going to take a piece of the burlap ribbon, and I'm going to cut, I guess about, I'm going to cut right about there. So that should be, that's about a 3 1/4 and about 2 3/4. I'm going to take the same piece, I'm going to cut it again. I'm going to use the angle that I just cut. I'm just line those up, and then I'm going to cut another square. Okay, so now I have my ribbon, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to place them kind of in opposite directions, so they're going to look like the pennant is sitting on top of this pennant shape that we've made with our burlap ribbon. But before I lay that down, I want to take our lighthouse and some large dimensionals, and we're going to put the lighthouse. Now, because I'm working quickly, this has pretty much set, but if you want it to set more, all you have to do is grab your heat tool, and if you have a Stampin' Up! Heat tool, then it will have a high and a low setting. So you can put it on the low setting and just kind of set your embossing paste a little bit better. Excuse me. So here's my sample. I'm just going to go ahead and put there's my lighthouse right there. So now I'm just going to take some snail, and the first piece you want to put down is going to be the bottom of your pennant. And all you have to do, just grab your snail, hold the edge of your ribbon, and just bring it on across. And then let's place that right there. We're going to do the same thing, but make sure you get the right side, because we want our ribbon to lay down like that. So we're going to be putting the tape on this side. And we're just going to lay that one down right there. And it's okay if you lay it over the top of your lighthouse. And if it sticks up a little bit, just grab a little bit of the snail and put some on the other side and tape it and press it down. There we go. So now I have my jute or my burlap ribbon down. I'm going to go ahead and put my pennant right there, and again I'm using the very large dimensionals, and I'm going to be rather generous with them only because I want to make sure they stick on this jute or this burlap ribbon. So I might put a little small one over here in this corner, and let's go ahead and peel those off. And we'll just place that right there. Okay, so this is still drying, but the next step is to go ahead and bring in our cardstock. And what I'm going to do is very carefully just apply some of my tear tape along the edge here, which shouldn't bother my clouds too much. And there you go. 2 beautiful cards featuring the lily pad card set as well as the high tide. If you want more ideas on how to create embossing and texture, then please subscribe to my newsletter. I have an online class which will feature the Lily Pad Lake stamp set, and where you can create some very beautiful cards using some of these techniques. I hope you will like this video. I'm glad I was able to share these tips and tricks, and please go to stampartconnection.com, subscribe to my newsletter, and go on to my online classes offer to look at all the classes that I offer that feature these products. This is Kat Chancellor, Stamp Art Connection and stampartconnection.com. Thanks for watching.